This is John McKean. When you visit the polls to cast your vote today, pause for just a second to consider that voting wasn't always as easy as it is today. I'll tell you about it on our KAKE Election Party Special. Election Day actually had its beginnings in ancient times. In classical Greece, voting was done mostly by a show of hands. But for legal decisions, a system of secret voting was developed using black and white balls made of stones or metal. If you'd lived in Rome in 139 B.C., you used a wooden ballot that was bulky but efficient and literally tamper-proof. It was not until medieval times that electoral colleges were established to select religious executives in Germany and Italy. The problem of getting people out to vote is hardly new either. In fact, the Athenians, in desperation, had to pay citizens to attend assembly meetings and cast their votes. Next, we'll hear about a candidate that made the best speech he ever regretted when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. Speeches and handshaking are as much a part of politics as voting itself. And at least one candidate made a speech that, although perhaps not his most famous, certainly must have been his most memorable. I'll tell you about it on our KAKE Election Party Special. Traveling from city to city trying to win votes can be a hectic and tiring process, and after a while the voters, the cities, the issues, they all seem the same. So in order to make it a little easier on a candidate, the staff sometimes writes a series of speeches designed to suit any occasion, any location, avoiding specifics or touchy problems. Those speeches often contain blanks in which the name of the city is written and may include parenthetical instructions about what the candidate ought to do to make a better impression on a certain group. But the system isn't always infallible, as one embarrassed candidate found out when he read the following speech in a small Midwestern town. Fellow citizens, it is an unexpected pleasure to meet my friends in this typical American town of... so rich in history, glory, and tradition. Slip in a stale joke here for these yokels. Well, next we'll discover what was probably one of the shortest and yet most long-remembered speeches ever made by a candidate, when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. Politicians are often considered long-winded and never really saying anything. Well, one candidate made what might be the shortest yet most long-remembered speech in the annals of politics. Find out about it on our KAKE Election Party Special. William Howard Taft was once asked to address a group at an after-dinner campaign fundraiser. The topic, the Christian in politics. The group waited expectantly as Taft polished off the dessert, dabbed his mouth with a napkin, stood up and said, "I've done research on the topic given me, and I've come to the conclusion there ain't no such thing." And then he sat down. Next, we'll hear what may be one of the funniest campaign speeches ever made when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now on KAKE. This is John McKean. What may be one of the funniest campaign speeches ever made is attributed to Senator George Smathers of Florida when he was running against Claude Pepper for the senatorial nomination in Florida's 1950 primary. We'll hear about it on our KAKE Election Party Special. The speech took place when Smathers was addressing a group of backwoods Floridians. He said, "Are you aware that Claude Pepper is known all over Washington as a shameless extrovert? Not only that, but this man is reliably reported to practice nepotism with his sister-in-law, and his sister was once a thespian in Greenwich Village. Worst of all, it is an established fact that Mr. Pepper, before his marriage, practiced celibacy." Next, an insight into a man not only known for his speeches, but also for the ability to say the right thing at the right time, Abraham Lincoln, when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. There are many things that contribute to making a man great, and Abraham Lincoln possessed several of them. But perhaps one of his strongest abilities was the ability to speak, as we'll see when our KAKE Election Special begins. Abraham Lincoln was well known for his ability as a statesman, but this quality became even more pronounced when it came time to campaign. Discussing a fiery opponent, Lincoln said the man reminded him of a steamboat he once saw as a child. The boiler was so small that when the whistle blew, the paddle wheel stopped turning, and when the wheel was moving, the whistle wouldn't blow. This, he said, was the problem his opponent had. When he talks, said Lincoln, he can't think, and when he thinks, he can't talk. Some campaigns are marred by what has come to be known as mudslinging, but sometimes the ability to sling a little wit goes much farther than mud. We'll see that next when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. In addition to suffering the usual barrage of verbal and written assaults, politicians sometimes become the targets of political opponents who express their opposition in the form of flying fruit, vegetables, and other sundry edibles. We'll see how one candidate reacted to that on our KAKE Election Party Special. While on a campaign stop tour in Ohio, William Howard Taft was addressing a group of potential voters. His speech was interrupted at midpoint when one of the more vocal dissidents lobbed a ripe cabbage up onto the platform, narrowly missing the speaker. But what could have been an embarrassing moment for Taft was turned completely around when he paused for a moment and said, "I see that one of my opponents has lost his head." Often, impromptu remarks have better results than contrived stagings, as we'll discover next when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. The best laid plans of mice, men, and even Teddy Roosevelt went astray. Join me in our KAKE Election Party Special. There was a time when Teddy Roosevelt expected a visiting delegation of voters from one of the western states. A whole group was going to visit him on his Oyster Bay estate in Long Island. They arrived to find Teddy dressed in Western-style farmer's clothes, pitchfork in hand. "You can talk to me while I pitch some hay, gentlemen," said Teddy. Then calling to an assistant, he said, "James, where's the hay to be pitched?" Replied the assistant, "Sorry, sir, but I just ain't had time to replace it since you pitched it up for yesterday's delegation." Well, despite that episode, Teddy was re-elected for a second term. Another famous president had an even more embarrassing experience, only this happened on an Indian reservation. That's coming up next when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. Politicians often keep an arsenal of jokes ready in the gaining of the confidence of voters or breaking down what can be a suspicious or icy atmosphere. But Harry Truman's favorite joke was the one that was on him. You'll hear about that on our KAKE Election Party Special. It happened when Truman was campaigning in 1948 and stopped on an Indian reservation. He spoke loudly and clearly and emphasized what he would do for the Indians if he was returned to office. At the conclusion of each of his roaring promises, the crowd shouted, "Oompa! Oompa!" Inspired by this show of support, Truman soared to even greater heights of oratory, punctuated by promises of a new, improved life for the Indians if he got back to Washington. "Oompa! Oompa!" came the response. Feeling very satisfied with himself, Truman finished and started back to the waiting cars, which involved crossing a large corral which had been packed with horses. Treading lightly and carefully, Truman's Indian guide turned to him and said, "Careful, don't step on the oompa." Coming up next, a candidate that was forced to change platforms just before making a speech. When our KAKE Election Party Special continues 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. William Jennings Bryan was a politician with a long name but a quick wit, as we'll see on our KAKE Election Party Special. The event was Bryan's 1908 barnstorming campaign tour to the far west. His reputation had preceded him, and in Omaha, the populace jammed the city's biggest auditorium. The campaign manager saw the problem and suggested to Bryan that he move out to a nearby pasture to speak so that everybody would have a chance to hear him. Bryan agreed. But then there was another problem. where he should stand so that all could see as well as hear him. Finally, the problem was solved when a manure spreader was spotted over at a corner of the field. Brian mounted it and began his speech this way. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time I've ever spoken on a Republican platform. Next, how Calvin Coolidge made a better dig with words than with a shovel. When we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. The day Calvin Coolidge was asked to say a few words, and did, on our KAKE Election Party Special. While on the campaign trail, politicians are often called upon to appear at strange events like a formal dedication. Calvin Coolidge was once asked to perform the conventional rites of turning over the first shovelful of dirt in a traditional groundbreaking ceremony. He did so, and thinking his part was complete, laid the shovel down and walked away. Then an aide quickly reminded him it was protocol to say a few words. So Calvin looked at the newly dug earth while thinking for a moment and then said softly, "You got some nice fish worms here," and walked off. Next, another look at the Cool of Coolidge when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE. This is John McKean, an example of the coolness of Calvin Coolidge on our KAKE Election Party Special. At a political affair, Calvin Coolidge once had to sit next to a running mate who had spent days polishing up his speech. The man arose and talked and talked and talked. Eager for approval from Coolidge when the long-winded speech was over, the man asked Calvin how he liked the speech. Calvin told him it wasn't bad, but that he'd missed a nice opportunity. The man asked. What opportunity? The opportunity to sit down about 20 minutes earlier, said Calvin. Coming up next, some kids talk about the election as our KAKE Election Party Special continues 30 minutes from now right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. What are the kids thinking while their parents go to the ballot box today? Some comments from kids on our KAKE Election Party Special. Some comments from kids on the election campaign.
I just think it's a great thing that we have the freedom to vote and pick who we want. All these people fighting about it. I mean, they call each other names and yell at each other, and they should just keep quiet and just let the people do what they want to do and let the people vote for who they want to.
I don't know very much about it. I really don't pay much attention to them. I doubt if I'll vote because I don't know anybody. You don't know what they're going to do.
TV commercials are really just saying that one senator is bad and the other one's bad, and they're just fighting back and forth and stuff. My dad, he knows who he's going to vote for, but my mom says she can't trust anything they say on TV.
How much you paying us for this commercial?
We'll have more comments from kids when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special 30 minutes from now right here on KAKE. This is John McKean. Elections can be a civics lesson for kids, as we'll hear next on our KAKE Election Party Special. What are kids thinking during today's election? Well, we asked some of them.
I don't know if I'm actually going to vote when I turn 18 because, like my mom, she don't think, she can trust anything they say on TV, and really it's pretty hard to decide to me, that is.
And some of the kids couldn't help wondering what would happen if there weren't any elections.
Somebody just come in and they start running the place. People wouldn't like it, but if the people got to pick, who they thought was the best, and the majority, would win. So that's more better because they know what's going on.
I know in Texas, all the people got together and they were voting for their thing, and each person had a sign out in the yard who they were voting for.
Coming up next, an insight into the history of voting, including the time that people were paid to vote, when we continue with our KAKE Election Party Special just 30 minutes from now, right here on KAKE.